The desert didn't forgive mistakes. Rhett learned that young, back when his hands were still soft and his instincts still needed sharpening. Now, at 32, riding into Red Rock under a sun that could peel paint off wood, he carried the kind of stillness that came from surviving what most men didn't. His horse, a gray mare with one white sock, picked her way down the rutted main street while dust devils spun themselves dizzy in the empty lots between buildings. Red Rock looked like God had given up on it halfway through creation. Half the storefronts wore boards across their windows. The Silver Bell Hotel leaned to one side like a drunk trying to remember which way was up. Even the church steeple had a crack running through it, splitting the cross at an angle that made it look like the whole structure was asking a question it didn't want answered. The few people Rhett passed didn't make eye contact. They saw his gun, worn leather holster sitting easy on his hip, and found somewhere else to be. Smart folks. The Crystal Palace Saloon sat at the end of the street, 2 stories of faded grandeur that remembered better days. Red paint peeled from the sign. The windows, surprisingly intact, reflected the afternoon glare in sheets of bronze light. Rhett's mare stopped without being told, 30 feet from the hitching post. She knew better than he did sometimes. Rhett swung down, his boots hitting packed earth that hadn't seen rain in months. He looped the reins loose, not tied, never tied, and adjusted his hat against the sun. The saddlebags stayed where they were. What he carried couldn't be stolen by any ordinary thief, and the extraordinary ones were waiting inside. 3 horses at the rail, all of them too well fed for a dying town. Rhett counted the details without appearing to look. The black gelding on the left favored its rear hoof. Rider wouldn't make good time in a chase. The paint in the middle had military tack, newer than it should be. Stolen, probably. The roan on the right stood quiet, which meant its owner knew how to train or how to beat. Either way, someone with patience. The saloon doors hung crooked on their hinges. Rhett paused at the threshold, letting his eyes adjust to the interior gloom. The smell hit first, stale beer, tobacco smoke, and something else. Sweat. The kind that came from nerves, not heat. He stepped inside and the conversation that wasn't really happening stopped completely. 7 men. More than he'd expected. Less than they'd needed. The bartender, 60 if he was a day with a face like old leather, stood behind a counter that had seen better decades. His hands stayed visible, flat on the wood. Smart. The patrons arranged themselves with the kind of casual spacing that wasn't casual at all. 2 at a corner table, playing cards neither of them looked at. 1 at the bar, nursing a drink. 3 more scattered at different angles, and 1 leaning against the wall by the stairs. Every single one of them watched Rhett without watching him. "We're closed," the bartender said. His voice came out steady, which took guts. Rhett walked to the bar anyway. His boots echoed on floorboards that creaked in all the wrong places. The kind of floor you couldn't cross quietly, which was the point. Someone had planned this room for exactly what it was. A box with no good exits. "Doesn't look closed," Rhett said. "Still got customers." "Private party." "Then it's my lucky day. I like parties." The man at the bar, built like a barrel with arms, shifted his weight. His jacket hung wrong on one side. Shoulder holster. The 2 card players hadn't moved, but their hands had drifted south, below the table edge. The one by the stairs had the best position, elevated angle, clear shot at the door. Professional work. Expensive. "Look, friend," the bartender tried again. "You don't want trouble, trust me on that." Rhett met his eyes. Saw the apology there, the resignation. This man wasn't part of it, just caught in it. "I stopped wanting things a long time ago," Rhett said. "Now I just deal with what comes. Whiskey. The good stuff, if you've got any left." For a long moment, nobody moved. The light through the dirty windows painted everything in shades of amber and shadow. Dust motes hung suspended like they were waiting to see what happened next. The bartender reached under the counter. Slow, careful. He produced a bottle that actually had a label and a glass that was almost clean. "On the house," he said quietly. Rhett nodded, waited while the pour happened. The whiskey caught the light, honey-colored and probably worth more than anything else left in this town. He lifted the glass but didn't drink yet. "Appreciate it," he said. Then, louder, addressing the room. "Anyone else thirsty?" The man at the bar, barrel chest, laughed. It came out harsh, like broken glass scraping concrete. "Funny guy," he said. I like funny guys. They die just as easy as the serious ones. That's a shame, Rhett said. World needs more humor. One of the card players, younger, maybe 25, with a scar through his eyebrow, stood up. His chair scraped back loud enough to make the point. You know why you're here? Scarbrow asked. I'm here for the whiskey. Already established that. You're here because you stuck your nose where it doesn't belong. You're carrying something that doesn't belong to you, and there's people who want it back. Rhett took his first sip. The whiskey was good, smooth burn, slight vanilla finish. He took his time savoring it. People want lots of things, he said finally. Wanting and getting are two different countries. The third card player stood now, older than Scarbrow, with the kind of weathered face that said he'd spent most of his life outside. Range work, maybe. Or running from the law. His hand rested on his gun, fingers drumming a nervous rhythm. There's 7 of us, he said. 1 of you. Math's pretty simple. Math's never simple, Rhett replied. Too many variables. For instance, how many of you actually want to die today? Because I'm guessing it's not all 7. Barrel Chest pushed off from the bar. He was bigger up close, with hands that looked like they could crack walnuts. Big talk for a dead man. See, that's another variable, Rhett said. You're assuming I'm dead. I'm working from the assumption I'm still breathing. One of us is wrong. The tension in the room pulled tighter. Rhett could feel it, the way the air gets right before a thunderstorm, when every hair on your arm stands up and the pressure makes your ears pop. These men were hired guns, but they weren't united. They were 7 individuals who happened to be pointing in the same direction, which made them predictable. The one by the stairs spoke for the first time. He had a voice like gravel in a can, smoker's rasp, maybe consumption. Voss wants the papers. Give them up, walk away. Simple. Voss? Rhett repeated, tasting the name like he'd tasted the whiskey. Harlan Voss. Mining magnate, town benefactor, man of the people. He paused. Also a thief, a fraud, and a killer. Did I miss anything? You missed the part where he owns this town, Gravel Voice said. Which means he owns us. Which means you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. Rhett set down his glass. The sound of it touching the bar was unnaturally loud. Let me tell you what I know, he said, and his voice changed. No more casual banter. This was the voice that had talked men down from ledges and talked them into graves. I know Voss has been cooking the books for 3 years. I know he's been reporting silver yields that don't exist, selling shares in veins that played out before most of you were born. I know he's borrowed against fictional assets and pocketed the difference. And I know that when the auditors come, and they're coming, he's looking at 20 years in a federal prison. The room got quieter. Quieter than silence, if that was possible. I also know, Rhett continued, that he sent you 7 to make sure those auditors don't have anything to audit, to make sure the evidence goes away, to make sure I go away. He looked at each man in turn. What I don't know is whether you boys understand what happens when this falls apart. Because it will fall apart, and when it does, Voss walks away rich. You're just the help, expendable. Scarbrow's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't spit out. You think you're smart, he finally said. You think you can talk your way out. No, Rhett said. I think I can shoot my way out. Talking's just more pleasant. Barrel Chest moved first, just a shift of his shoulders, a tensing of his gun hand. But it was enough. The dance had started, even if the music hadn't. Papers, Gravel Voice said from the stairs. Now, or we start making this hurt. Rhett considered this. The smart play was to stall. The smarter play was to make them think he was stalling when he was actually counting. Exits, angles, reaction times. The smartest play was to make them act first, because the man who draws first dies first. That's what the movies got wrong. The fastest gun doesn't win. The most accurate gun wins, and accuracy requires calm. They're in my saddlebag, Rhett said. Outside, on my horse. Gravel Voice smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Well then, guess you better go get 'em. Guess so. Rhett turned his back on the room, walked toward the door with the same measured pace he'd used coming in. He could feel 7 guns tracking his spine, 7 fingers on 7 triggers, 7 men trying to decide if killing him in the back was worth whatever Voss was paying. He made it 3 steps. Wait, said a new voice. Rhett stopped. This voice came from the corner he'd mentally marked as unknown, a shadow he'd registered but not cataloged. The shadow moved, and a man stepped into the better light. Older than the others, maybe 50, with silver in his beard and the kind of stillness that came from either wisdom or damage. "Name's Pike," the man said. "Used to ride with the 7th Cavalry, fought Apaches, killed more men than I can count." He paused. "You know what I learned?" "What's that?" Rhett asked. "Man who turns his back either doesn't care if he dies or knows something you don't. Which is it?" Rhett smiled, thin, cold. "Both." Pike nodded slowly, like Rhett had confirmed something. "Figured. You've been clocking this room since you walked in. You know where every man stands. You know which ones are actually dangerous. You know that kid with the scar can't shoot for shit. He's shaking so bad his hand's probably cramping. You know the fat one's got a shoulder rig that'll catch on his jacket. You know the ones by the wall have each other in their crossfire if this goes loud." "You're smarter than you look," Rhett said, "and you're here on purpose. This isn't bad luck or bad timing. You walked into this knowing what waited." "Maybe I'm just thirsty." "Maybe," Pike said, "or maybe you're exactly what Voss is afraid of. Not a hired gun, not a lawman. Something worse, someone who doesn't want money or glory, just wants to watch his empire burn." The room had gone from tense to brittle. One wrong word and everything would shatter. "What's your point, Pike?" Barrel Chest growled. Pike didn't take his eyes off Rhett. "My point is we're all being paid to kill a dead man. Voss didn't tell us he's got the papers. He told us to stop him from delivering them. Big difference. Means the damage is already done. Means we're not here to prevent anything. We're here to send a message." Rhett tilted his head slightly. This was interesting. "What kind of message?" he asked. "The kind that says nobody crosses Harlan Voss and lives. The kind that keeps the next do-gooder from trying. You're not the mission. You're the example." Scarborough shifted nervously. "So what? We still get paid." "Sure," Pike said. "Right up until the Federals arrive and want to know who killed their star witness. Then Voss says he never knew us, never hired us, and we're just guns for hire who went too far. You think he's keeping us around after that?" The silence that followed was different. This was the sound of men realizing they'd been played. "You're lying," Barrel Chest said, but his voice had doubt in it now. "Am I?" Pike looked at Rhett. "When did you mail the copies?" Rhett's smile widened just a fraction. 4 days ago, certified mail. 3 different recipients, federal prosecutor, territorial governor, and the New York Times. Even if you kill me right now, those papers arrive tomorrow morning." "Son of a bitch," someone whispered. The bartender, silent this whole time, let out a long breath. "Then what are you doing here?" he asked Rhett. "Why walk into this if the job's already done?" It was a good question, the kind that deserved an honest answer. "Because Voss has been bleeding this town for 3 years, Rhett said. "The miners who still work here, they're owed 6 months back pay. The families who stayed, they're living on credit at a company store that charges triple what things cost. The reason Red Rock is dying isn't bad luck or played-out veins, it's systematic theft. And someone needed to look Harlan Voss in the eye and tell him it's over." "That's someone being you," Pike said. "That's someone being me." Gravel voice pushed off from the wall. He looked tired suddenly, older than his years. "I'm not dying for Voss's pride," he said. "Someone wants to call him out. That's between them." He walked to the bar, set down his gun, and headed for the door. Nobody stopped him, one down. The others looked at each other, then at Rhett, then at the money they weren't going to earn. "This is bullshit," Scarborough said, but he was already backing toward the exit. His partner, the weathered one, followed without a word. 3 down. Barrel Chest and 2 others remained, plus Pike, who hadn't moved. "You 3 staying for the show?" Rhett asked. Barrel Chest's face had gone red. "We took Voss's money. We gave our word." "Your word to a thief and a liar. That means something to you?" "Means more than walking away from a job." Pike sighed. "Then you're a fool, but you're a consistent fool. I'll give you that." He picked up his hat from where it had been resting on a chair, dusted it off, and settled it on his head. "Good luck," he said to Rhett. Then to the others, "Better luck? You'll need it." 4 down. That left 3. Barrel chest and two men Rhett had mentally labeled Quiet One and Nervous One. Quiet One had the look of someone who'd done this before, probably a lot. Nervous One kept licking his lips, hand hovering near his gun like he was afraid it might bite him. "Last chance," Rhett said. "Walk away. Live to spend whatever advance Voss gave you." "Can't," Barrel Chest said. "Already spent it." "That's the saddest thing I've heard all day." "Yeah, well, life's sad sometimes." The bartender slowly, carefully moved toward the back room. Smart man. Rhett didn't blame him. "How do you want to do this?" Quiet One asked. His voice was calm, professional. Rhett thought about it. "Fair would be one at a time, but that's not how the world works, is it?" "No," Quiet One agreed. "It's not. So we all draw, we all shoot, and we see who's still standing." Nervous One made a sound like a strangled laugh. "You against three? Those odds don't—" "Odds are for gamblers," Rhett interrupted. "This is math. How fast can you clear leather? How steady is your hand? How many shots do you need to hit a target 10 feet away? Those are calculable variables." "You talk too much," Barrel Chest said. "Been told that before." The light through those windows had shifted. Late afternoon now, painting everything in shades of burnt orange. Dust still hung in the air, patient as death. Somewhere outside, a horse whinnied, life continuing, indifferent to what happened in this room. Rhett's hand hung loose at his side. Not tense, not ready. Just there. Barrel Chest moved first. His hand went for his gun, too fast, too eager. The weapon cleared the holster, but his grip was wrong, finger finding the trigger before the barrel came level. A rookie mistake from someone who should have known better. Rhett's draw was smooth, one motion, hand to gun to raise to fired. The sound was enormous in the enclosed space. Barrel Chest stumbled back, surprise written across his face like he couldn't quite believe what had happened. He looked down at the spreading red on his shirt, then up at Rhett, then down again. His gun clattered to the floor. He followed it a second later, hitting the boards with a sound like dropped lumber. Quiet One and Nervous One drew together, better coordination, but still too slow. They were reacting to Barrel Chest's move instead of making their own, which cost them half a second. In gunfights, half a second was the difference between breathing and bleeding. Rhett's second shot took Quiet One in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his gun skittering under a table. Not fatal, but definitely out of the fight. Nervous One got his shot off. The bullet went wide, punching through a window and letting in a shaft of sunlight that illuminated the gun smoke like a stage effect. Rhett's third shot was more careful. Center mass. Nervous One dropped without making a sound. 3 shots. 3 men down. 11 seconds total. The silence that followed was profound. Rhett's ears rang from the gunfire. The smell of burnt powder mixed with the copper scent of blood. Quiet One was groaning, clutching his shoulder. The other two weren't making noise anymore. Rhett walked to where Quiet One lay, kicked his gun further away, and knelt down. "Need a doctor?" he asked. Quiet One's eyes were tight with pain, but still focused. "Need to know why." "Why what?" "Why you let them walk out? The others could have killed us all." Rhett considered this. "Because they made the smart choice. You made the stupid one. Universe rewards one, punishes the other. That's not philosophy. That's physics." He stood, holstered his gun, and walked back to the bar. His whiskey was still there, mostly undisturbed. He picked it up and finished it in one swallow. The bartender emerged from the back room, took in the carnage, and surprisingly didn't look shocked. "Gonna need a new floor," he said, "but bloodstains don't come out easy." "Send the bill to Harlan Voss," Rhett replied. "He can afford it, for now." He set down the glass and headed for the door, stepped over Barrel Chest's body without looking at it. Outside, the sun was lower, the heat slightly less punishing. His mare waited exactly where he'd left her, patient as stone. Rhett untied the reins and swung into the saddle. The town hadn't changed in the 15 minutes he'd been inside. Still dying, still desperate, still waiting for something to give. But the waiting was almost over. He turned the mare toward the far end of town, toward the mining office where Harlan Voss would be counting his money and his days. The evidence was already in transit, yes, but Rhett had meant what he said. Someone needed to look Voss in the eye and tell him it was over. Might as well be today. The mining office sat at the north end of Red Rock, like a landlord watching over property it had already bled dry. 2 stories of painted wood that had once been white but now looked the color of old teeth. The windows on the second floor caught the lowering sun, turning them into squares of molten copper that made it impossible to see inside. Rhett knew someone was up there, though, watching, waiting. The street between the saloon and the office stretched maybe 300 yards, but it felt longer. Empty storefronts lined both sides like spectators at a funeral. A few faces appeared in windows, pale ovals that vanished the moment Rhett glanced their way. Word traveled fast in dying towns. By now everyone knew what had happened at the Crystal Palace. 3 men down, 4 fled, and 1 stranger still standing. Rhett kept his mare to a walk. No hurry. Rushing made you sloppy, and sloppy got you killed. Halfway down the street, an old woman stepped out from the boarded-up general store. She couldn't have weighed 90 pounds, all sharp angles and sun-weathered skin. Her dress had been mended so many times it was more thread than fabric. "You're making a mistake," she called out. Rhett slowed, but didn't stop. Which mistake would that be? Voss owns the sheriff, owns the mayor, owns every man with a badge or a gun in 50 miles. Her voice cracked on the edges, worn thin by years of losing. "You kill him, they'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." Maybe. No, maybe about it. I've lived here 43 years, seen men try to stand up before. They're all in the ground now. Rhett did stop then, turned in his saddle to look at her properly. Her eyes were the color of faded denim, and they'd seen too much. "What's your name?" he asked. "Martha. Martha Brennan." "Martha, when those federal auditors arrive tomorrow, and they will arrive, what do you think happens to Voss's empire?" She laughed. It came out bitter as burnt coffee. "Men like him don't fall. They land somewhere soft. Probably already has money stashed away, property and other names. He'll walk, and the rest of us will still be here, stuck with whatever mess he leaves behind." "You're probably right," Rhett said, "but at least you'll get your back pay. The mine will get a new owner, maybe someone who actually extracts silver instead of just lying about it." "And you think that's worth dying for?" Rhett considered this. The sun was lower now, painting shadows that stretched like dark water across the street. His mare shifted her weight, patient but ready to move. "I think," he said slowly, "that there's 2 ways to die. Quick, doing something that matters. Or slow, watching men like Voss grind you down until there's nothing left but dust. You've been dying slow for 3 years, Martha. All of you have. Maybe it's time someone tried the other way." He didn't wait for her response. Nudged the mare forward, leaving Martha Brennan standing in the street with her hands clasped together like she was praying to something she'd stopped believing in years ago. The mining office had a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. 4 men stood on it now, and none of them looked like clerks. They had the stance of hired muscle, weight on their heels, hands near their guns, eyes tracking Rhett's approach with the kind of focus that came from knowing violence was coming and not knowing when. Rhett dismounted 20 feet out, left his mare ground-tied again, reins loose. She knew the drill. "Office is closed," one of the men said. He had a mustache that drooped past his chin and a vest that strained across his gut. "Come back tomorrow." "I don't think I will," Rhett said. Mustache's hand drifted to his gun. "You the one caused trouble at the palace?" "Depends on your definition of trouble. I ordered whiskey. They tried to kill me. I objected. Things escalated. You killed 3 of Voss's men. They weren't very good at their jobs." Another man, younger, with a face like a hatchet blade, stepped forward. "You got stones walking up here. Stupid stones, but stones. Been called worse." "You know what happens now, Hatchet Face asked. Rhett nodded toward the door. "I walk in there, talk to Voss, we settle this." Mustache laughed. "You think he's just going to sit down and chat after you killed his people?" "He'll talk. He's smart enough to know I wouldn't be here if I didn't have something he needs to hear." The 4 men looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them, the language of hired guns trying to figure out if the pay was worth the risk. Rhett had seen it before. The math was simple. Stay loyal to the man who paid you, or get out of the way of the man who'd already proven he could stack bodies. "Boss says nobody gets in," Mustache said, but his voice had less conviction now. "Then I guess we have a problem." Rhett's hand stayed loose, but every muscle in his body was calibrated. 4 targets. The one on the left was favoring his right side. Old injury, probably ribs. He'd be slow turning. Hatchet Face was the real threat, young and wired tight. The other two were background noise, paid help without the stomach for actual killing. The door opened before anyone could make the next move. The man who stepped out wasn't Voss. Too young, maybe 30, with wire-rimmed spectacles and ink stains on his fingers. A clerk, and a terrified one. His eyes went wide when he saw Rhett. "Mr. Voss wants to know what you want," he stammered. "Face-to-face conversation," Rhett said. 5 minutes. "He says—" The clerk swallowed hard. "He says you can deliver your message through his men. He's busy." "I'm sure he is. Busy burning ledgers, busy packing bags, busy trying to figure out which border's closest." Rhett raised his voice, pitching it to carry through the open door. "Tell him the papers are already gone. Federal prosecutor has them. Governor has them. New York Times has them. Only question now is whether he wants to run, hide, or face this with something resembling dignity." Silence from inside. Then footsteps. Slow, measured, the sound of someone who wasn't used to being rushed. Harlan Voss appeared in the doorway. He was smaller than Rhett had imagined. Maybe 5'8", narrow shoulders, with the kind of bland face that disappeared in crowds. Thinning hair slicked back with pomade. Expensive suit that probably cost more than most families in Red Rock earned in a year. The only remarkable thing about him was his eyes, pale gray, like dirty ice. "You're Calder," Voss said. Not a question. "I am. You've caused me considerable inconvenience. You've caused this town considerable suffering. Figured we were trading." Voss studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Gentlemen," he said to his men, "give us the room." Mustache looked uncertain. "Boss, I know what he is. I also know he won't shoot an unarmed man in front of witnesses." "Will you, Mr. Calder?" "Depends on whether you plan to stay unarmed." "Fair enough." Voss spread his hands, showing them empty. 5 minutes. Then you leave. Those are my terms." Rhett glanced at the 4 guards. They'd backed up but hadn't left. Close enough to intervene, far enough to pretend they weren't eavesdropping. 5 minutes, Rhett agreed. He followed Voss inside. The office was exactly what he'd expected. Dark wood paneling, maps of the mining claims covering one wall, a desk the size of a small boat, covered in paperwork that was probably being sorted into keep and burn. A safe in the corner, door hanging open, empty. Smart. Anything valuable was already gone. Voss walked to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He offered one to Rhett. "Bourbon, 20 years old, cost me more than you'll make in a lifetime." Rhett took the glass but didn't drink. "You have 4 minutes." Voss settled into the chair behind his desk, leaned back, casual, like they were discussing the weather. "You think you've won," he said. "I think I've done what I came to do." "Which is?" "End this. The theft, the lies, the bleeding of people who can't afford to lose anymore." Voss sipped his bourbon, savored it. "Noble. Stupid, but noble. You know what your problem is, Calder? You think justice means something. You think the law is going to ride in here and fix everything? The law's already riding. Should arrive tomorrow. And then what? They arrest me? Probably. I post bail, definitely. I hire lawyers, expensive ones. The case drags on for years. Meanwhile, the mine's in receivership, which means nobody works, nobody gets paid, and Red Rock finishes dying." He paused. "You didn't save this town. You just changed how it dies." Rhett set down his glass. Untouched. "You done?" "Almost. One more thing." Voss leaned forward. "The papers you mailed. The evidence. You think that's the only copy? I think if you had another copy, you wouldn't be sitting here trying to convince me I made a mistake. You'd have already used it." Voss's smile widened. "Smart. Silas was right about you." The name hit like a punch. Rhett's expression didn't change, but something must have shown because Voss's smile turned genuine. "Oh yes," Voss continued. "You think I don't know about Silas Boone? The old man who's been documenting my operations for months? The one who brought you in when he realized he couldn't do this alone?" He stood up, walked to the window. "I've known about Silas for 3 weeks. Been letting him think he was being clever. letting him gather his evidence, letting him feel like he was winning. Why? Because evidence needs to be credible, needs to look authentic. And old Silas, with his careful notes and his righteous anger, he made perfect evidence, evidence I could use. Rhett's hand moved closer to his gun, not threatening, just ready. Use how? Insurance, Voss said. See, when the Federals arrive, they're not going to find a thief. They're going to find a victim. A businessman who was defrauded by his own bookkeeper. A man who discovered the theft, confronted the criminal, and was in the process of making things right when outside agitators, he gestured at Rhett, complicated matters. Silas has the original ledgers. The real numbers. Had, Voss corrected. Past tense. My men picked him up about an hour ago. Right now he's in the processing building, along with every scrap of paper he's been hoarding. You mail your copies. The Federals investigate. And they'll find what? The word of a dead embezzler against the books of a respected businessman? The room tilted. Rhett's vision narrowed to a point. Silas. The old man who'd spent 6 months building the case. Who'd risked everything because he'd believed someone would listen. Who'd trusted Rhett to see this through. Where? Rhett said quietly. The processing building, east of here. You know it. Big structure, smokestacks, where we used to actually extract silver before the veins ran dry. Voss checked a pocket watch. Should be fully involved in about 10 minutes. Tragic accident. Lamps in old buildings, you know. So dangerous. Rhett's gun cleared leather before conscious thought kicked in. He had it aimed at Voss's chest, hammer back, finger on the trigger. Voss didn't flinch. Go ahead, he said. Shoot me. Murder me right here. Then explain to those 4 men outside why they should let you walk out. Then explain to the law why they should believe you over their physical evidence. Then watch Silas burn anyway, because you're too late to save him and too stupid to see the trap. 3 seconds. That's all it would take. 3 pounds of pressure, 1 bullet, end Harlan Voss and everything he represented. Rhett lowered the gun. Smart choice, Voss said. You're learning. Too late, but learning. Now get out. Your 5 minutes are up. Rhett walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. This isn't over. Yes, Voss said. It is. Outside, the sun had dropped below the western mountains. Dusk was coming fast, that brief window between day and night when everything looked gray and uncertain. The 4 guards watched Rhett emerge, hands on their guns, waiting to see what happened. He walked past them, got to his mare, mounted up. That's right, Mustache called after him. Run away. Smart move. Rhett didn't respond. He turned the mare east toward the processing building and kicked her into a gallop. The distance was maybe half a mile, but it stretched like a canyon. Every second counted. Every hoofbeat was time Silas didn't have. The mare ran flat out, her breath coming in hard bursts, hooves throwing up dust that turned gold in the dying light. The processing building came into view, a hulking structure of wood and corrugated metal, 3 stories tall, with smokestacks that hadn't produced smoke in over a year. Except one of them was producing smoke now. Black, oily, the kind that came from burning more than just coal. Rhett could see the orange glow through the ground floor windows. He pulled up hard, the mare sliding to a stop, jumped off before she'd fully settled. The heat hit him from 20 feet away, a wall of scorching air that made breathing hurt. The main entrance was already engulfed, flames licking up the doorframe and across the overhang. Side entrance. Had to be. He ran around the building, found a smaller door on the north wall, tried the handle, locked. He stepped back and kicked it hard, right next to the lock. The frame splintered. Second kick and it gave way, swinging inward to reveal a stairwell filled with smoke. Rhett pulled his bandana up over his nose and mouth. Wouldn't help much, but it was something. He went in low, beneath the worst of the smoke, using his hands to feel the walls. The heat was worse inside, suffocating. The smoke burned his eyes, made them water until he could barely see. "Silas!" he shouted. His voice came out rough, half strangled by the smoke. No answer, just the roar of the fire, the crack of timber, the groan of a building eating itself. First floor was fully involved. Flames ran along the walls like living things, consuming everything flammable. Old equipment, conveyor belts, sorting tables, smelting crucibles, stood like dark monuments in a sea of orange. The floor was starting to sag in places, boards buckling from the heat. Rhett moved to the stairs. They were metal, which meant they weren't burning, but they were hot enough to scorch through his gloves when he grabbed the railing. He went up fast, taking them two at a time, lungs screaming for clean air. Second floor was better. Less fire, more smoke. Storage area, mostly empty now, except for a shape slumped against the far wall. Rhett ran to it. Silas Boone looked small in the semi-darkness, almost fragile. 70 years old if he was a day, with a shock of white hair and hands that trembled from something other than fear. He was bound, rope around his wrists and ankles, and gagged with a strip of cloth. His eyes were closed. Rhett pulled the gag free and checked for a pulse. Weak, but there. He cut the ropes with his knife, got his arms under Silas, and lifted. The old man weighed nothing, just bones and gristle and stubborn will. Getting down was harder. The smoke was thicker now, billowing up the stairwell like a chimney. The metal stairs had heated to the point where Rhett could feel it through his boots. Each step was careful, calculated. One wrong move, and they both went down. He made it to the first floor. The fire had spread. What had been isolated pockets was now a connected inferno. The path he'd taken in was blocked. The flames had jumped to the ceiling, creating a curtain of fire between him and the door. Rhett looked around. Windows. High up, maybe 8 feet off the ground, but better than nothing. He carried Silas to the wall beneath one, set him down gently, and looked for something to stand on. Found an overturned crate that hadn't caught yet, dragged it over. The window was small, barely 2 feet square, covered in soot and wire mesh. Rhett kicked at it. The mesh held. He kicked again, harder. The frame bent. Third kick and the whole thing gave way, tumbling outward and letting in a rush of cool evening air. He climbed up on the crate, got his arms through the window, and pulled. The opening scraped his shoulders, tore his shirt. Didn't matter. He wiggled through and dropped 8 feet to the ground outside, landing hard enough to jar his teeth. Back through the window, he could see Silas still slumped against the wall. Getting him out would be harder. The old man was unconscious, which meant dead weight. No way to make him climb. Rhett pulled off his belt, then his shirt, tied them together to make a crude rope, climbed back up to the window opening and leaned through as far as he could, hanging upside down with his legs hooked over the sill. He grabbed Silas under the arms and pulled, slowly, carefully. The old man's weight nearly dragged them both through, but Rhett's legs held. He got Silas halfway up the wall, then repositioned and pulled again. Inch by inch, hand over hand. Behind them, something massive gave way with a sound like thunder. The ceiling collapsed in the center of the room, sending up a shower of sparks and a blast of heat that singed Rhett's hair. One more pull. Silas's upper body was through the window now. Rhett grabbed his belt, used it as a handle, and hauled the old man the rest of the way through. They tumbled to the ground in a heap. Rhett lay there for a moment, gasping. His lungs felt like they were full of ground glass. His eyes burned. His hands were blistered from the hot metal stairs. But Silas was out, still breathing. Still, he stood up, got his arms under the old man again, and carried him away from the building. Put distance between them and the fire. Found a spot 50 yards out, where the ground was relatively flat, and set Silas down gently. The processing building was fully engulfed now. Flames shot 30 feet into the darkening sky. The smoke could probably be seen for miles. Inside, all of Silas's evidence, the original ledgers, the careful documentation, months of work, was turning to ash. Rhett sat down hard. His legs wouldn't hold him anymore. He watched the building burn and tried to figure out what came next. "You're an idiot." The voice was weak, barely a whisper, but it was there. Rhett looked down. Silas's eyes were open, watery from the smoke, but focused. "Yeah," Rhett said. "Been told that a lot lately. Should have let me burn. Evidence was more important. Evidence was copies. You're the original." Silas coughed. It sounded like rocks in a can. He has the real books now, has his version of events. When the Federals come, they'll find what they find. We'll figure it out. How? Another cough. How do we prove anything without the originals? It was a good question. Rhett didn't have a good answer. The copies he'd mailed would show the discrepancies, sure, but Voss was right. Without the original ledgers, it became a question of credibility. a respected businessman against an unknown drifter and a disgruntled former employee. In the distance, Rhett heard shouts, voices calling out. The fire must have attracted attention. People would come to watch it burn, maybe help. More likely, just watch. "We need to move," Rhett said. "Can you ride?" "Can I?" Silas tried to sit up, failed, fell back. "No, don't think. I can stand." "Then I'll take you to Doc Sullivan, get you checked out." "Doc's in Voss's pocket, everyone is." "Then we'll go somewhere else, next town. Federal Marshal is coming tomorrow anyway. You can tell your story to him." Silas closed his eyes. "My story. Your copies, Voss's lawyers. You really think, that ends well?" "I think we're not dead yet. That's something." A laugh, dry and brittle. Optimist, didn't know those still existed. The mare had wandered closer, drawn by Rhett's voice. He caught her reins, positioned her next to Silas, and spent the next 5 minutes getting the old man onto the saddle. It wasn't graceful, involved a lot of groaning, and at least one moment where Rhett thought Silas might pass out again. But eventually the old man was mounted, slumped forward, with his arms around the mare's neck. Rhett walked alongside, one hand on the reins, the other steadying Silas. They headed south, away from the fire, away from the mining office, away from the center of Red Rock. The streets were emptying now as people went to watch the processing building burn. Nobody paid attention to a man walking a horse with an injured rider. Or if they did, they didn't care enough to ask. Doc Sullivan's office was on the edge of town, a small house with a shingle hanging from a post. Light showed in the windows. Rhett tied up the mare and helped Silas down, half carrying him to the door. He knocked, waited, knocked again. The door opened a crack. A woman's face appeared, middle-aged, hair pulled back tight, with eyes that said she'd seen enough suffering to last 3 lifetimes. "We're closed," she said. "Got a man here who breathed a lot of smoke, needs looking at. Come back in the morning." Rhett wedged his boot in the door before she could close it. He might not make it to morning. "Please." She studied Silas's face, then Rhett's. Whatever she saw made her decision. "Bring him in, quickly." The interior was sparse, exam table, medicine cabinet, sink with a hand pump. Clean but worn. The woman, Doc Sullivan, he assumed, helped get Silas onto the table. "What happened?" she asked, already checking his pupils, his pulse, his breathing. "Building fire." He was inside. "Which building?" "Processing plant." Her hands paused for just a second, then continued. "I see." She worked in silence for several minutes, listened to Silas's lungs, checked for burns, gave him water which he sipped slowly. Finally, she stepped back. "Smoke inhalation, some minor burns on his hands. He'll live, but he needs rest. Can't travel for at least 2 days. Can he stay here?" Now she did look at Rhett directly. "You know what you're asking? Voss finds out I'm harboring Silas Boone, I lose my practice. Maybe worse." "I know, I'm asking anyway. Why should I risk it?" It was a fair question. Rhett thought about lying, about making up some noble reason, but lies required too much energy, and he was out. "Because if you don't, Voss wins," he said simply. "And I don't think you want that any more than I do." Doc Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Outside, they could hear shouting, more people heading toward the fire. The smell of smoke was everywhere now, seeping in through the windows. "He can stay in the back room," she said finally, "but if anyone asks, I never saw him. Understood?" "Understood." She helped Rhett move Silas to a small room behind the office. Just a bed, a chair, a table. Nothing fancy, but it was safe. For now. Silas was already half asleep, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving him exhausted. Rhett stood over him for a moment, watching the old man's chest rise and fall. "You did good," Rhett said quietly. Silas's eyes fluttered open. "Did I? Voss has everything. We have nothing. We're alive. He thinks we're finished. Sometimes that's enough." "For what?" "To figure out the next move." Silas smiled, barely. "Always was. A tactician, even when there's no tactics left. Get some rest. I'll be back." "Where are you going?" Rhett checked his gun, still loaded, still ready. "To remind Voss that fires work both ways." Doc Sullivan grabbed his arm as he headed for the door. Don't be stupid. You go after him now. You're just playing his game. I'm already playing his game. Might as well play to win. You can't win against someone who owns everything. Rhett looked at her. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion there, the years of watching powerful men grind good people into dust. The resignation that came from losing so many times you stopped counting. Maybe, he said, but I can make sure he doesn't enjoy it. He left before she could argue more. Outside, the sky had gone full dark. Stars were starting to appear, hard points of light against the endless black. The fire was aglow on the horizon, painting the underside of the smoke plume orange. Rhett untied his mare and swung into the saddle. His body protested, everything hurt, from his scorched hands to his smoke-damaged lungs. But pain was just information. It told you that you were still alive and still had work to do. The mining office would have more guards now. Voss would be expecting retaliation. Probably had every gun in town pointed at the front door, which meant the front door was the wrong approach. Rhett rode west instead of north, circling around to come at the building from behind. The backside faced an empty lot where they used to park ore wagons. No guards, no lights. Just a loading door and a ground floor window with a broken latch. He dismounted quietly, ground-tied the mare in the shadows, and approached on foot. The window opened with a soft creak. He climbed through into what looked like a storage room. Crates, filing cabinets, dust thick enough to write your name in. The building was quiet. Voices filtered down from upstairs. Voss and his men probably discussing the fire, the missing Silas, the persistent problem of Rhett Calder. Good. Let them talk. Talking meant they weren't paying attention. Rhett moved through the ground floor like a ghost. Found the stairs, took them slow, testing each step before committing his weight. Old buildings talked when you walked them, but only if you moved like you were in a hurry. Second floor was offices. Empty now. Papers scattered across desks like someone had left in a rush. Through the window, he could see the glow of the fire, smaller now but still burning, still consuming evidence, still erasing the past. Voices got louder, coming from the far end of the hall. An office with the door half open and lamplight spilling out. Rhett got close enough to listen. Don't care what it takes, Voss was saying. Find Calder. Find Boone if the old man survived. End this tonight. What about the Federals? That was Mustache. They're still coming tomorrow. Let them come. Without evidence, without witnesses, all they have are suspicions, and suspicions don't hold up in court. The copies Calder mailed will show discrepancies, so what? I'll claim Boone was cooking the books, skimming profits, and when I discovered it, he fled. Calder's just his accomplice. Story writes itself. Silence. Then another voice, younger. And if they don't believe you? They'll believe my lawyers, they'll believe my political connections. They'll believe the version that makes the most sense. A pause. Power isn't about being right. It's about being believed. Rhett had heard enough. He stepped into the doorway. 6 men in the room. Voss behind his desk, Mustache and Hatchet Face flanking him. 3 others scattered around, hired guns, all of them, hands dropping to weapons the moment Rhett appeared. Gentlemen, Rhett said, hope I'm not interrupting. Voss's face went through several expressions in quick succession. Surprise, anger, calculation, and finally something like respect. You're persistent, he said. Stupid, but persistent. Funny. Was just thinking the same about you. The hired guns had their weapons out now. 6 against 1. The math wasn't good, and everyone in the room knew it. Last chance, Voss said. Walk away. Leave Red Rock. Forget this ever happened. I'll even pay you for your trouble. Say, $5,000? Keep your money. 10,000. Final offer. Rhett shook his head. You really don't understand, do you? This isn't about money. Never was. Then what is it about? Consequences. You've spent years avoiding them. Figured it was time someone delivered. Voss stood up, spread his hands. You're outnumbered, outgunned, out of options. What exactly do you think happens here? I think, Rhett said slowly, that your men are about to make a choice. Follow you into whatever happens next, or live to spend whatever you've already paid them. He looked at each guard in turn. Any of you know what the penalty is for killing a federal witness? Because that's what Silas Boone is. Officially. As of about 3 hours ago when I sent that telegraph to the territorial marshal. You kill me, you're not just murderers, you're cop killers. They'll hang you in the public square and sell tickets. Mustache licked his lips. He's bluffing. Am I? Want to bet your neck on it? The room got very quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before everything breaks. Voss smiled. It was the coldest thing Rhett had ever seen. Fine, he said. We'll do this the hard way. His hand went for the desk drawer. Rhett's gun cleared leather in the same heartbeat. The shot was loud in the enclosed space, deafening. The bullet took Voss in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the wall behind his desk. The room exploded. Mustache went for his gun, but Rhett was already moving, dropping low and to the left as 3 shots punched through the space where he'd been standing. Wood splintered from the door frame. Plaster dust rained down. The lamp on Voss's desk shattered, plunging half the room into darkness. Rhett fired twice. The first shot caught Mustache in the leg, dropping him hard. The second went wide as Hatchet Face crashed into him from the side, both of them hitting the floor in a tangle of limbs. The gun skittered away across the floorboards. A boot caught Rhett in the ribs. Pain exploded up his side, but he rolled with it, using the momentum to get distance. Hatchet Face came after him, pulling a knife from somewhere. The blade caught the remaining lamplight, a flash of silver in the gloom. Rhett kicked out, connecting with Hatchet Face's knee. Something popped. The man went down screaming, the knife clattering away. Rhett scrambled for his gun, fingers closing around the grip, just as someone grabbed his collar and hauled him backward. One of the other guards. Big. Strong. Hands like vice grips. Rhett twisted, drove his elbow back into soft gut. The grip loosened enough for him to turn and headbutt the man square in the nose. Blood sprayed. The guard let go, staggering back with both hands over his face. 2 down, 4 left standing. Rhett's lungs were already burning from the earlier smoke, and now they were screaming for air. His vision had dark spots at the edges. Not good. He needed to end this fast, or he wouldn't end it at all. The remaining guards were smarter now, cautious. They'd spread out, creating crossfire angles. Professional work. Rhett backed toward the window, keeping them all in view. His gun tracked from target to target, but he was down to maybe 3 rounds. Had to make them count. You can't win this, one of them said. Young voice, scared but trying not to show it. Just put down the gun. Where's Voss? Rhett asked. His own voice came out rough, damaged. Getting medical attention. You shot him. Not well enough, apparently. Behind the desk, in the shadows, Rhett caught movement. Voss trying to crawl toward the door, leaving a blood trail but still mobile. The shoulder wound wasn't fatal. Rhett's aim had been off by 6 inches. Smoke damage, bad light, or just rust. Didn't matter. The result was the same. Let him go, Rhett said, jerking his chin toward the door. This is between me and him. Can't do that, young voice said. He pays us. He was paying the men at the saloon, too. 3 of them are dead now. You want to join them over a paycheck? Silence. The kind where men were doing math in their heads. Money versus mortality. It should have been an easy calculation, but pride made it complicated. The guard with the broken nose had recovered enough to pull his gun. He aimed it at Rhett with shaking hands, blood still streaming down his face. You're done, he said. Drop it. Rhett shot him in the shoulder, the same shoulder he'd hit Voss in. Not fatal, just enough to take the fight out. Broken Nose spun around and collapsed against the wall, his gun falling from nerveless fingers. 2 rounds left, 3 guards remaining, and they were done talking. They opened fire simultaneously. Rhett dove through the window. Glass exploded around him. He hit the porch roof outside, rolled and dropped the 8 feet to the ground, landed hard enough to jar his teeth and send pain shooting through his already damaged ribs. The gun almost slipped from his hand, but he held on. Boots thundered above him, the guards rushing to the window. Rhett ran for the corner of the building as bullets chewed up the dirt behind him. Made it around the edge just as wood splintered from the siding inches from his head. His mare was gone. Smart horse. Knew when to leave. He was on foot now in a town full of people who wanted him dead. Perfect. Rhett ran. Not toward the main street. That way was suicide. Instead, he cut through the empty lot behind the mining office, heading for the cluster of abandoned buildings on the eastern edge. The old residential section, back when Red Rock had enough workers to need houses. Most were empty now. rotting, falling apart. But they had walls and shadows and places to think. Behind him, voices shouted, organizing. They'd spread out, try to box him in. Standard tactics, which meant he needed non-standard responses. He ducked into the first building he reached. No door, just an opening. Inside was darkness and the smell of decay. Furniture still scattered around like the occupants had left in a hurry. Probably had. When the mine dried up, people didn't stick around to watch their investments rot. Rhett moved through the house by feel, hands out, testing each step, found the back door, locked. He kicked it open and kept moving. Cut through what used to be someone's garden, now just dead weeds and broken fence posts. Crossed an alley, entered another house. This one had been a store. Counters still standing, shelves bare. The floor creaked under his weight, announcing his presence to anyone listening. He moved faster, heading for the stairs. Second floor was residential. Room so small you could barely turn around. But there was a window facing west, toward the center of town. Rhett crouched beside it and looked out. The mining office was lit up now, every lamp burning, guards on the porch and in the street. They had torches too, which meant they were serious about finding him. He counted 8 men, more than before. Voss must have called in reinforcements, not good odds. Rhett checked his gun. 2 rounds. He had more ammunition in his saddlebag, but his saddlebag was with his mare, and his mare was somewhere smart. He needed to think, needed to plan, but his head was foggy from the smoke and the pain and the sheer weight of trying to stay alive. Footsteps below. Someone had followed him into the building. Rhett moved to the top of the stairs. Listened. 2 sets of feet. Careful. Quiet. Professionals. They knew he was here, knew he was cornered, and they weren't rushing it. Calder. A voice from below. Not young voice. Someone new. You're trapped. No way out except through us. Rhett didn't respond. Talking gave away position. Voss wants you alive. Says he'll pay double to whoever brings you in breathing. A pause. But he'll settle for dead if that's how it has to be. Still nothing from Rhett. He watched the stairs. Dark shapes moving in the darkness below, getting closer. Your call, the voice continued. Easy or hard? The stairs creaked. First man coming up. Slow, testing each step, smart. The second man would be covering him, ready to fire if anything went wrong. Rhett waited until the first shape was 3 steps from the top. Then he fired. The shot lit up the darkness for a fraction of a second, long enough to see the guard's surprised face, long enough to confirm the hit. The man tumbled backward, crashing into his partner. Both went down in a heap of cursing and scrambling. 1 round left. Rhett ran. Back through the rooms, down a different hallway. Found another window, this one facing north. He opened it as quietly as he could and climbed out onto a narrow ledge, maybe 18 inches wide, 2 stories up. Below was more dead garden and a pile of broken lumber. He edged along the ledge, hands pressed against the wall, boots finding purchase on wood that felt like it might give way any second. Made it to the corner, around the side, dropped onto a lower roof that groaned under his weight, but held. From here he could see more of the town. The processing building was still burning, but lower now, just embers and smoke. The saloon was dark, most of the other buildings too. People were inside, doors locked, waiting for the violence to pass. They'd gotten good at waiting. Rhett dropped from the low roof to the ground, landed in a crouch. His ribs protested, but he ignored them. Pain was just noise. He needed to move, needed to get to Doc Sullivan's. Check on Silas, figure out the next play. But between here and there was 300 yards of open ground and a town full of armed men looking for him. He stayed low, used the buildings for cover, moved shadow to shadow. The night was dark enough to help, but the torches from the search parties cut through it in places. He had to time his movements, wait for the light to pass, then sprint for the next cover. Halfway across town, he ran out of luck. There, someone shouting. By the old mill! Rhett ran. Full sprint. No more stealth. Just speed. Boots pounding dirt, lungs screaming. Behind him, more shouts. Boots. Torches bobbing as men gave chase. A shot rang out. Wide. Another. Closer. They were firing blind, but there were enough of them that blind might be enough. Doc Sullivan's office appeared ahead. Lights still on, door closed. Rhett didn't slow down. Hit the door with his shoulder and it burst inward, nearly taking the hinges with it. Doc Sullivan was there. She jumped, dropping the bandage she'd been holding. Silas was sitting up in the chair, looking better than he had, but still pale. "Lock the door," Rhett gasped. "Now!" She moved fast, threw the bolt, grabbed a heavy bar, and wedged it under the handle. Not a second too soon. Bodies hit the door from outside, fists pounding, voices demanding entry. "Open up!" Mustache's voice. He'd recovered from the leg wound, apparently, or was running on pure spite. "We know he's in there." Doc Sullivan looked at Rhett. Her face had gone white. "What did you do?" "Long story." "I don't want a long story. I want you out of my house." "Can't do that right now." The pounding got louder. The door shuddered, but held. Old wood. Built back when people made things to last. Silas stood up, wobbled, caught himself on the table. "How bad is it?" "Bad. Voss is alive. Guards everywhere. They're not stopping until they find us." "Us?" Doc Sullivan's voice went up an octave. "I'm not part of this. I'm just harboring a witness," Rhett finished. "Soon as they figure out Silas is here, you're part of it whether you want to be or not." She closed her eyes. Took a breath. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but it had company now. Anger. The kind that came from being backed into a corner one too many times. "There's a root cellar," she said, "under the kitchen. Not much, but it'll hide 2 people if they don't mind small spaces." "Show us." She led them through the house. Kitchen was barely 10 by 10, with a wood stove and a pump sink. She pushed aside a rug to reveal a trapdoor, pulled it up, darkness below and a smell like earth and potatoes. "Down," she said. "I'll cover the door." Rhett helped Silas descend the ladder. The old man's hand shook, but he made it. Rhett followed. At the bottom was maybe 6 feet of clearance and enough space to stand if you hunched. Jars lined rough shelves, preserved food, emergency supplies, a place to wait out disasters. They were about to test its limits. Above, the trapdoor closed. Darkness complete. Rhett heard the rug being dragged back into place, then footsteps. Doc Sullivan moving through the house. The front door splintered, wood cracking, men forcing entry, heavy boots on the floor. "Where is he?" Mustache's voice. "Don't lie. We know he came in here." "I don't know what you're talking about." Doc Sullivan's voice, steady, convincing. "I've been treating patients all evening. Nobody came through that door. We saw him. Saw him run in here not 2 minutes ago." "Then you saw wrong. This is a medical office. I don't harbor criminals." Footsteps. Multiple people moving through the rooms, opening doors, checking closets, getting closer to the kitchen. Rhett's hand found Silas in the darkness. The old man was trembling, whether from fear or cold or leftover smoke damage. Rhett couldn't tell. He gave what he hoped was a reassuring squeeze. Boots on the kitchen floor. Right above them. Rhett could see lamplight through the cracks in the floorboards. A shadow passed over, paused, moved on. "Nothing here," someone said. "Check everywhere. Every room, every closet, under every bed." More footsteps. More searching. The minutes stretched. Rhett's legs started to cramp from standing hunched. He shifted his weight carefully. The cellar floor was packed earth, silent. Above, the search continued. Furniture being moved. Drawers opened. Thorough. Professional. These weren't random thugs. They were trained men doing a job. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, Mustache spoke again. "He's not here." "Told you," Doc Sullivan said. "Maybe. Or maybe you're hiding him. We should burn this place. Flush him out." Silence. Rhett's hand went to his gun. 1 round. If they tried to burn the building with Doc Sullivan inside, he'd come out shooting. 1 round meant one of them would die. Probably wouldn't be enough, but it was something. "You burn this building," Doc Sullivan said quietly, "and you burn the only medical care within 50 miles. Next time one of you gets shot or sick or breaks something, where are you going to go? You willing to ride 2 days to the next doctor? What about Voss? He took a bullet tonight. Who's going to change his bandages, clean the wound, keep him from dying of infection?" More silence. The kind where logic was fighting against orders. "We're leaving 2 men outside," Mustache said finally. They see anyone come or go, they report it. You try to sneak him out, we'll know. Fine. Put men outside. Won't see anything because there's nothing to see. Boots retreated, door slammed, voices fading into the distance. Rhett waited, counted to 100, then another 100. Above, the trapdoor opened. Light spilled down. Doc Sullivan's face appeared. "They're gone," she said. "2 guards out front, like he said, but the rest moved on." Rhett climbed out first, helped Silas up after. The old man looked worse in the light. Gray skin, shaking hands. The smoke had done more damage than Rhett had thought. "You need rest," Doc Sullivan said to Silas. "Real rest, not hiding in cellars." "Can't rest," Silas wheezed. "Voss knows I'm alive, knows I'm somewhere in town. He won't stop looking. Then what's the plan?" She looked at Rhett. "You seem like a man with plans. What's next?" Rhett walked to the window, careful not to show himself. Outside, 2 shapes stood in the shadows across the street. Guards, watching, waiting. The rest of the town was quiet, most people asleep or pretending to be. "Voss has the original ledgers," Rhett said. "The evidence is gone. The copies I sent will show discrepancies, but without the originals, it's our word against his. So we lost," Silas said. "Not yet. Voss is wounded, scared, making mistakes. He could have let you burn in that building, but he chose to let you live. Why?" Silas frowned. "Bait. He knew you'd come for me." "Right, which means he thinks I'm the threat. Not the evidence, not the Federals, me. He's focused on eliminating witnesses instead of covering his tracks." So? "So that's his mistake. He's fighting the wrong battle." Doc Sullivan crossed her arms. "You're talking in riddles. What battle should he be fighting?" Rhett turned from the window. "Public opinion, the miners, the people he's been stealing from. Right now they're scared of him. They think he's untouchable. But what happens when they find out he's bleeding, that he can be hurt, that someone stood up to him and lived?" "They'll still be scared," Doc Sullivan said. "Fear doesn't disappear that easy." "No. But it gets company. Anger. Hope. The idea that maybe things could change." He looked at Silas. "You've been documenting his crimes for months. You know every miner he cheated, every family he put in debt, every promise he broke. How many are there?" Silas thought about it. "In Red Rock? Maybe 40 families still here, another 100 scattered to other towns when the work dried up. All of them owed money. All of them told the mine was closing because the silver ran out, not because Voss had been lying about yields for 3 years. And if they knew the truth, they'd want blood." "Exactly. Voss's power comes from control, control of information, control of resources, control of fear. We break that control, we break him." Doc Sullivan shook her head. "You're talking about starting a mob. That's not justice. That's chaos. I'm talking about giving people the truth. What they do with it is their choice." "And how exactly do you plan to spread this truth? Stand in the street and shout it? Voss's men will shoot you before you finish the first sentence." It was a good point. Rhett walked back to the window, thought about it. The guards were still there, patient. Red Rock was locked down tight, every exit watched, every movement tracked. Voss had turned the town into a prison, but prisons had weak points. Guards got tired, attention wandered, and people talked. In a town this small, with this much desperation, word spread like fire in dry grass. "The miners," Rhett said slowly. "Where do they drink?" "Used to be the palace," Silas said. "But after today, I'd guess the Silver Bell's basement. Old speakeasy from when the town council tried to ban liquor. Never really closed, just went underground." "How many would be there tonight? On a night like this? When there's violence and uncertainty?" "All of them. Drinking's what you do when the world doesn't make sense." Rhett nodded. "Then that's where we go." "We?" Doc Sullivan looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You walk into a room full of drunk miners and start talking revolution, you're going to get yourself killed. They're Voss's employees. He still signs what passes for paychecks. Paychecks 6 months late for work that's barely worth doing, in a mine that Voss told them was played out." Rhett met her eyes. "These men aren't loyal to Voss, they're just out of options. We give them an option, they'll take it." "You hope." "I know. Because I've seen what desperate men do when someone gives them something to fight for." Silas coughed. It turned into a fit that lasted 30 seconds. When he could breathe again, his eyes were watering. Even if you convince them, what then? An angry mob against Voss's hired guns? That's a massacre. Not if we're smart. Not if we make Voss choose between fighting the town and running. He won't run. He's got too much invested here. Then we make the cost of staying higher than the cost of leaving. Rhett checked his gun. 1 round. Not enough. He looked at Doc Sullivan. You have weapons? She hesitated, then nodded. Went to a cabinet and pulled out a shotgun. Old but maintained. She handed it over along with a box of shells. My father's, she said. He was a hunter. Died 10 years back. I kept it for, well, I don't know what I kept it for. Never had occasion to use it. Rhett loaded the shotgun. 5 shells, plus his 1 pistol round. 6 total shots. Better than nothing. He looked at Silas. You're staying here, too weak to fight, and you're the only one who can testify when the Federals arrive. I should be there. They know me. Trust me. They'll trust Doc Sullivan just as much. She's been treating them for years, saved their kids, set their broken bones. When she talks, they'll listen. Doc Sullivan's eyes went wide. Oh no, I'm not getting involved in this. You're already involved. The moment you let us in that door, you chose a side. I chose to save a life. That's different from starting a war. Is it? Voss has been waging war on this town for 3 years. Quiet war, economic war, the kind where nobody fires shots but people still die. You've seen it. The malnutrition, the despair, the families that gave up and left. That's violence too. Just slower. She looked away. Her jaw worked like she was chewing on words she didn't want to say. Finally, what do you need me to do? Come with me to the Silver Bell. Tell them what you've seen. The evidence Silas collected. The ledgers that show Voss has been lying. The fact that help is coming tomorrow, but only if we survive tonight. And if they don't believe me, then we're no worse off than we are now. Silas grabbed Rhett's arm. His grip was weak but insistent. This is foolish. You're risking everything on a gamble. Everything's a gamble. This one just has better odds than waiting for Voss to hunt us down. The guards outside, how do we get past them? Rhett smiled. It felt wrong on his face. Too cold. Too much like the smile Voss had given him. We don't sneak past. We walk right through. He went to the front window again. The 2 guards were visible now, standing under a lamppost. They weren't even trying to hide. Why would they? This was Voss's town, his rules. Rhett opened the front door. The guards snapped to attention, hands going to guns. Doc needs supplies, Rhett called out. Patient's fever spiked. She's heading to the pharmacy. One of the guards stepped closer, suspicious. Pharmacy's closed. She's got a key. Owner gives her emergency access. We weren't told about this. That's because it just happened. You want the patient to die while we wait for permission? The guards looked at each other. The eternal problem of hired muscle. They had orders, but orders didn't cover every situation. They had to think. And thinking was dangerous when you were used to following. Doc Sullivan appeared in the doorway behind Rhett. She'd put on a coat and was carrying her medical bag. She looked the part. Concerned doctor on an emergency call. Gentlemen, she said, I need to get medicine. I'll be 15 minutes. You're welcome to follow me if you want to explain to Mr. Voss why his doctor was delayed from treating a dying child. The dying child was a nice touch. Rhett hadn't coached her on that. She was a better liar than she'd claimed. The guards wavered. One of them nodded. Make it quick. Doc Sullivan walked down the steps. Rhett followed a few paces behind, shotgun hidden under his coat. The guards watched, but didn't follow. They'd been told to watch the house, not escort the doctor. Different orders, different mission. They made it 30 yards before one of the guards called out, Wait, who's that with you? Rhett didn't turn. Assistant. Someone's got to carry supplies. Don't recognize him. New in town. Hired him yesterday. A pause. Then, stop. Both of you. Rhett stopped. So did Doc Sullivan. They were 50 yards from the house now, far enough that running might work. Close enough that the guards could probably hit them if they tried. Footsteps behind them, getting closer. One guard coming to investigate, while the other covered. Rhett's hand found the shotgun under his coat. He waited until the footsteps were close. 3 feet. 2. He turned and swung the shotgun up in one motion, caught the guard under the chin with the barrel. The man's head snapped back. He stumbled. Rhett reversed the gun and clubbed him across the temple. The guard went down hard and stayed down. The second guard was already drawing his gun. Rhett fired. The shotgun roar split the night. The guard took the blast in the chest and flew backward like he'd been kicked by a horse. The sound echoed off the buildings, loud enough to wake the dead, loud enough to bring every gun in town running. "Move," Rhett said. They ran. Doc Sullivan's medical bag bouncing against her hip. Rhett reloaded the shotgun while moving. Muscle memory. His hands knew the motions even if his brain was still processing what he'd just done. 2 men down. Maybe dead. Probably dead. The math was getting worse. The Silver Bell Hotel sat 3 blocks south. They covered the distance in under a minute. Behind them, shouts, torches. The hunt was on again, and this time they knew exactly where their prey was heading. The Silver Bell's front entrance was boarded up. Had been for years. But Rhett remembered Silas saying something about a basement. He circled to the back, found a set of stairs leading down to a door below street level. Light seeped through the cracks. Voices inside. The sound of men trying to forget their troubles. Rhett didn't knock. Pushed the door open and walked in. The basement was larger than he'd expected. Low ceiling supported by rough timber posts. Lanterns hanging from hooks. A makeshift bar made from old boards and barrels. 20 men scattered around on chairs and crates, most with drinks in hand. They all turned when the door opened. The conversation died. 20 pairs of eyes locked on Rhett and the shotgun he was holding. A man near the bar stood up, big, graying beard, hands scarred from years of mine work. "Who the hell are you? Name's Rhett Calder, and we need to talk." The man with the graying beard took a step forward. His eyes moved from Rhett to the shotgun and back again. "This is a private gathering. You're not invited." "I know, but you're going to want to hear what I have to say anyway." Someone near the back laughed, bitter. "Let me guess, you're here to save us. Another outsider who thinks he knows what's best for Red Rock. I'm here to tell you the truth. What you do with it is your business." The bearded man crossed his arms. "Truth about what?" "About why you haven't been paid in 6 months. About why the mine's barely operating. About why Harlan Voss has been telling you the silver's gone when the veins are still producing." That got their attention. The laughter stopped. Men sat up straighter. A few exchanged glances. "That's a serious accusation," Graybeard said slowly. "It's a fact. Voss has been cooking the books for 3 years, reporting yields that don't exist, selling shares based on lies, keeping the real profits for himself while telling you there's nothing left to pay you with. You got proof of that?" Rhett nodded toward Doc Sullivan. "She does, or she knows who does. Tell them." Doc Sullivan stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. "Silas Boone spent 6 months documenting everything, every ledger, every discrepancy, every lie Voss told. The evidence shows the mine's been producing steady silver this whole time, enough to pay every man here what he's owed and then some." "So where's our money?" someone called out. "Voss's bank accounts, his properties in other states, his investment portfolios. He's been bleeding this operation dry while telling you it's dying naturally." Graybeard was quiet for a long moment. Then, "If what you're saying is true, where's Silas? Why isn't he here telling us himself?" "Because Voss tried to kill him tonight. Locked him in the processing building and set it on fire. I pulled him out. He's alive, but he's injured, recovering at Doc Sullivan's." Murmurs rippled through the room, men talking among themselves, processing. The processing building had been burning for hours. Everyone had seen it, but most had assumed it was an accident. A younger man stood up, maybe 25, thin, angry. "My wife's sick. Been sick for 2 months. Can't afford medicine because we got no money. If what you're saying is true, if Voss has been holding back our pay while she's been suffering," his voice cracked. Couldn't finish. "It's true," Doc Sullivan said quietly. "I've been treating her. On credit. Because I know you're good for it. But you can't pay because Voss won't pay you. That's the cycle he's created. Keep you desperate enough that you can't leave, but not desperate enough that you revolt. It's calculated. It's cruel. And it's been happening right under our noses. Why should we believe you?" Another voice. Older. Skeptical. "For all we know, you're working with Calder here, making up stories to cause trouble." Because I've lived here 40 years, Doc Sullivan said. Her voice had steel in it now. I delivered half your children, set your broken bones, sat with your dying parents. I've never lied to you before. I'm not starting now. The room went quiet. That kind of appeal carried weight. Personal history mattered in small towns. Trust was currency. Grainbeard rubbed his face. Even if this is all true, what are we supposed to do about it? Voss has guns, has money, has connections. We're just minors. You're 40 men, Rhett said. 40 men who know this town better than any hired gun, who have more reason to fight than someone pulling a paycheck. That's not nothing. It's not enough either. You saw what happened at the palace. Voss sent 7 men to kill 1. He's got resources we don't. He had resources. Past tense. 7 men at the palace. 4 of them walked away. 3 died. Another 6 at his office. I dropped 2. That's 5 dead. 4 who quit, and maybe 8 still loyal, against 40 of you. The math changes. A man in the corner spoke up, older than most, scar across his cheek. You killed 8 of Voss's men today? 5 for certain, 3 more injured. Point is, he's running out of people willing to die for him, especially now that they know the Federals are coming. What Federals? The ones arriving tomorrow morning. I sent certified copies of Silas's evidence to a federal prosecutor, the territorial governor, and a newspaper. Even if something happens to the originals, the investigation's happening. Voss knows it. That's why he's desperate. That's why he's making mistakes. Grainbeard sat down heavily. So what do you want from us? I want you to stand up, go to the mining office, demand your back pay, demand to see the real ledgers, demand answers. Do it together. Do it loud. Make it so Voss has to choose between fighting all of you or cutting his losses and running. And if he chooses to fight, Rhett was quiet for a moment. Then we fight back. But I don't think he will. Men like Voss are bullies. They're strong when they're facing 1 person or 2, but 40, all demanding the same thing, all willing to stand their ground. That's not a fight he can win even if he kills every one of us. Because the story gets out. The Federals investigate harder. His whole empire collapses. The thin young man spoke again. My wife needs medicine. Real medicine. The kind that costs money we don't have. If there's even a chance Voss has been holding back what's ours, I'm in. I'm in, said another voice. Me too. One by one, men started standing. Not all of them, maybe half. But half of 40 was 20, and 20 was enough to start something. Grainbeard stood last. I'm Thomas. Tom. Been working these mines for 32 years. Seen a lot of men come through promising change. Most of them were liars or fools. He looked at Rhett. You might be both, but you're also the first person who's actually done something about Voss instead of just talking. So yeah, I'm in. Rhett nodded. Good. We need to move fast. Voss knows I'm still alive, knows I'm somewhere in town. He'll be organizing his remaining men. We need to get to his office before he fortifies it. What about weapons? Tom asked. Most of us got nothing but picks and shovels. That's enough. This isn't about killing anyone, it's about showing force. Showing that you won't back down. Voss's guns don't mean much if his men won't fire them. And most won't. Not at 20 angry miners demanding what they're owed. A man near the bar stood up. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent his whole life underground. What about the ones who will fire? What about the true believers? I'll handle them, Rhett said. It came out colder than he intended. He was tired, hurt, running on fumes and fury. The violence of the day sat heavy on him, but he couldn't afford to acknowledge it yet. Later, after this was done. If he survived. They filed out of the Silver Bell's basement like soldiers going to war. 20 men who'd been beaten down so long they'd forgotten what standing tall felt like. Doc Sullivan walked with them. So did Rhett, the shotgun heavy in his hands. The street was dark. A few torches burned in the distance where Voss's men were still searching for him. But this part of town was quiet. Forgotten. The perfect place to gather without being seen. Tom fell in step beside Rhett. You really think this will work? Honestly? I don't know. But I know doing nothing means Voss wins, and I'm tired of watching men like him win. You talk like you've seen this before. Different towns, different tyrants, same story. Someone takes power, uses it to hurt people, Everybody knows it's wrong, but nobody does anything because doing something is dangerous, until one day someone decides the danger is worth it. That someone being you? Today it is. They rounded the corner onto the main street. The mining office was visible now, maybe 200 yards ahead, still lit up like a beacon. Rhett could see shapes moving on the porch. Guards, probably 6 or 7. Voss would have called in everyone he still trusted. Tom raised his hand. The men behind him stopped. 20 miners plus Rhett and Doc Sullivan. Against unknown numbers of professional guns. The smart play was to turn around, go home, survive another day. Nobody turned around. "We do this together," Tom said. Not to Rhett, to his men. "Nobody breaks ranks. Nobody runs. We go in there and we stand our ground. Understood?" Murmurs of agreement. Some men gripped their tools tighter. A few looked scared. Most looked angry. The kind of anger that had been building for months and finally had a direction. They started walking, not running, not sneaking, just walking straight down the middle of the street like they had every right to be there. Because they did. The guards on the porch noticed when they were 50 yards out. Rhett saw them stiffen, saw hands go to weapons, saw one of them turn and shout something through the door, 40 yards. The guards spread out, formed a line, 7 of them, all armed, all watching the approaching crowd with the kind of tension that preceded violence. 20 yards. The miners kept walking. Rhett stayed slightly ahead, the shotgun visible now. A statement, 10 yards. The guards raised their weapons, rifles, pistols, all pointed at the crowd. "That's far enough," one of them called out. Rhett recognized the voice. Young voice from the office. He sounded less certain now. "Turn around. This is private property." "This is the mining office," Tom said. His voice carried, strong. "We work the mine. We have business here." "Office is closed." "Then open it." "Can't do that." Tom took another step forward. So did the men behind him. 20 people moving as one. "We're here to see Mr. Voss. We're here to discuss our wages, our contracts, our working conditions." "That's our right." "Come back in the morning, during business hours." "We've been coming back for 6 months. Always some excuse, always some delay. We're done waiting." Young voice looked uncertain. He glanced at the other guards. They looked equally unsure. Probably hadn't signed up to shoot unarmed miners. That was different from shooting a lone gunman. That had consequences. The door to the office opened. Voss appeared. His left arm was in a sling. Blood had seeped through the bandage. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp. He'd cleaned up since the shooting, changed clothes, looked almost respectable if you ignored the wounded shoulder. "Gentlemen," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. The voice of a man used to controlling rooms. "This is unexpected. What seems to be the problem?" "You know the problem," Tom said. "You've known for 6 months. We want our pay." "I understand your frustration. The mine's been operating at a loss. You know that. I've been transparent about our financial difficulties." "You've been lying," Rhett said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The mine's been profitable. You've been cooking the books and pocketing the difference. Silas Boone documented everything. Federal prosecutors have the evidence. They'll be here tomorrow." Voss's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. "Mr. Calder, still alive. I'm impressed. And still spreading your conspiracy theories, I see. Not theories, facts. You want to deny it? Show us the real ledgers, the production numbers, the yields from the past 3 years. Let these men see the truth. The ledgers are confidential business records. I don't have to show you anything." Tom stepped forward. "You do if you want us to keep working. You do if you want this mine to operate. You do if you don't want 40 men walking off the job and telling every newspaper in the territory why." Voss smiled. It was thin, tired. "You think you have leverage here? You think making threats is going to help?" He gestured to the guards. "I have armed men. You have miners with shovels. The mathematics are simple." "Are they?" Rhett asked. "Because I count 7 guards, maybe 8, against 22 of us. Those guards start shooting. They might drop a few, maybe even half. But the other half will get through. And when they do, your guards die. And so do you. That's the real mathematics." The guards shifted uncomfortably. They'd done the same calculation and arrived at the same conclusion. Being on the winning side didn't mean much if you were dead. Voss's smile faded. This is extortion. No, Tom said. This is 20 men asking to be paid for work they've already done. That's not extortion, that's collection. Someone in the crowd has shouted, "We want our money!" Others picked it up. The chant built, not organized, not elegant, just raw, angry. The sound of people who'd been silent too long. Voss raised his hand for quiet. Surprisingly, the chanting stopped. He still had that power. The habit of obedience ran deep. "Very well," Voss said. "You want to see the books? Fine. Mr. Henderson." He turned to one of the guards. "Bring out the main ledger." Henderson hesitated, then nodded and went inside. Tom looked at Rhett. Something was wrong. They both felt it. Voss had given in too easily. Men like him didn't surrender without a fight. Henderson emerged carrying a large bound ledger. Heavy, leather cover. He brought it down the steps and handed it to Tom. Tom opened it, flipped through pages. His frown deepened. He showed it to the man next to him. Then another. The murmurs started. These numbers, Tom looked up at Voss. These show the mine operating at a loss, barely producing. Exactly what you said. Because that's the truth, Voss said smoothly. I've been honest with you from the beginning. The mine is dying, has been for years. I've kept it operating as long as I could, but the silver's running out. That's not fraud, that's geology. Rhett's jaw tightened. Of course. The ledgers. Voss had prepared for this. Had a clean set ready to show. Numbers that looked legitimate. That told the story he wanted told. These are fake, Rhett said. They're certified by an independent accountant, Voss replied. His signature is on every page. You're welcome to verify. Tom looked confused. The other miners, too. They'd come looking for proof and been handed what looked like proof of the opposite. The certainty was draining out of the room. Rhett stepped forward, took the ledger from Tom, flipped through it. The pages were good, professional, the kind of forgery that cost money to create, but forgeries nonetheless. Where are the production reports? Rhett asked. The daily yields, the assay results. This ledger shows totals, but not the underlying documentation. Those are in storage. I'm not digging through 10 years of paperwork at this hour. Convenient. Voss's smile returned. Convenient? You storm my office with an armed mob, demand to see my records, and when I provide them, you call me a liar? Gentlemen, he addressed the crowd now. You've been misled by a dangerous man. Rhett Calder is wanted for murder. He's killed multiple people today. He's trying to create chaos to cover his crimes. Don't let him use you. The crowd was wavering. Rhett could see it. The anger was still there, but doubt had joined it. When people were tired and desperate, they wanted simple answers. Voss was offering them one. The mine was dying. Not because of greed or fraud, just bad luck. Nobody's fault. It was easier to believe than the alternative. This is a waste of time, one of the miners said. He was already turning to leave. We came for answers, got them. Let's go home. Others started to follow. The moment was slipping away. Rhett's hand tightened on the shotgun. He could force this, put the gun to Voss's head, demand the real books, but that would make him exactly what Voss was claiming, a violent criminal. And it wouldn't change minds. Doc Sullivan stepped forward. Wait. Everyone stopped. She walked to the porch steps, looked up at Voss. You said the mine's been operating at a loss, she said. Barely producing. That's correct. Then why did you try to kill Silas Boone? If your books are clean, if you have nothing to hide, why lock an old man in a building and set it on fire? Voss's expression flickered, just for a second. I did no such thing. That was an accident, a tragic accident. Liar. The word came out flat, cold. I've known Silas for 20 years. He's meticulous, careful. The idea that he'd accidentally start a fire is absurd. And I saw him tonight, saw the rope marks on his wrists, saw the bruises on his arms. Someone tied him up, left him to die. If that's true, it wasn't me. Perhaps Calder did it, tried to eliminate the one witness who could contradict his story. Rhett pulled him out of the fire, Doc Sullivan said. Nearly died doing it. Why would he save someone he'd tried to kill? Theater. To make himself look heroic. Doc Sullivan shook her head. You're desperate. I can hear it in your voice. See it in the way you're standing. You're wounded, scared, making up stories because the truth is catching up to you. She turned to the miners. I've treated most of you, your children, your wives. When have I ever lied to you? Never, Tom said quietly. Then believe me now. Voss is lying. His books are fake. His story is fake. And if we walk away tonight, he wins. The Federals will arrive tomorrow and find what? A town that believed his lies, that chose comfortable fiction over hard truth. Is that who we are? The crowd shifted. The doubt was still there, but so was something else. Shame. The recognition that they'd almost taken the easy way out. The thin young man spoke up. My wife's dying because I can't afford medicine. If there's even a chance Voss has been stealing from us, I need to know. I need to see those production reports, the assays, all of it. Not tomorrow, tonight. I want to see them too, another miner said. Me too. The momentum was building again. Voss could feel it. His jaw tightened. You have no right to demand private business records, he said. His voice had an edge now, the smooth facade cracking. We have every right, Tom said. We're not just workers. We're stakeholders. Our labor built this operation. Our sweat. Our blood. You want to tell us it was all for nothing? Fine, but prove it. Show us everything, or admit you've been lying. Voss looked at his guards. They looked back. The calculation was happening again. Fire on the crowd or stand down. 7 against 22. Even if they won, they lost. This is sedition, Voss said. Insurrection. I'll have every one of you arrested. With what authority? Rhett asked. The sheriff you own? The one who'll be investigated along with you when the Federals arrive? Good luck with that. Voss's face had gone from pale to red. Fury barely contained. He was cornered, and he knew it. Men like him didn't handle corners well. Fine, he spat. You want to see the records? Henderson, bring everything. Every file, every report. Let these fools bury themselves in paperwork. Let them see how little they understand about running a business. Henderson looked uncertain. Boss, the real files are, I know where they are. Bring them, all of them. Henderson went inside. The other guards stayed where they were, hands still on weapons but no longer pointing them. The tension had shifted, still there, still dangerous, but different. Minutes passed. The crowd waited. Rhett watched Voss. The man had agreed too quickly again, which meant another play, another angle. Henderson emerged carrying a wooden file box. Heavy. He set it down on the porch. Voss opened it, pulled out a stack of papers. Production reports, assay results, daily yields going back years. Here, Voss said. He threw the papers at Tom's feet. Sort through them. See if you can make sense of anything. You'll find exactly what I told you. A dying mine, depleted veins, the end of an era. Tom picked up the papers, started looking through them. His frown deepened. Other miners crowded around trying to read over his shoulder. Rhett moved closer. Something was wrong. The papers looked legitimate. Official stamps, signed reports, but the numbers were still showing decline. Steady, consistent decline over 3 years. Too consistent. Rhett had seen production reports before, from mines, from quarries, from any extraction operation. They didn't decline in smooth curves. They jumped, spiked, dropped, reflected the reality of hitting pockets, working through rock, dealing with water. Nature wasn't smooth, nature was chaotic. These numbers were too perfect. These are fake too, Rhett said. They're signed by geologists, Voss shot back, certified professionals. Professionals you paid. Just like you paid the accountant who signed those ledgers. Prove it. And there it was, the challenge. Prove the forgery. Prove the conspiracy. Without the originals that had burned in the processing building, without Silas's meticulous documentation, all they had were copies that could be dismissed and Voss's prepared fabrications. The crowd was wavering again. Tom looked exhausted. The fight was draining out of them. They'd come ready to confront a villain and found paperwork instead. Complexity. Ambiguity. The things that killed revolutions. Rhett looked at the mining office, at the windows, at the structure itself. An idea formed. Terrible. Dangerous. Probably stupid. But it might work. You know what I think? Rhett said. He was talking to the crowd now, not to Voss. I think the real records are still in there, in a safe, or a hidden room. Somewhere Voss thought they'd never be found, because men like him keep insurance, keep proof, in case they need it later. You're guessing, Voss said. Am I? Then you won't mind if we look. This is my property. You have no legal right. We're past legal rights, Tom interrupted. His voice had changed, harder. He'd made a decision. You've hidden behind legality for 3 years while we starved, while our families suffered. No more. He looked at the other miners. We're going in. We're searching this place top to bottom. Anyone want to stop us? The guards looked at Voss. Voss looked at the crowd. 22 angry men who'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross, who'd moved from asking to demanding to taking. You're making a terrible mistake, Voss said quietly. Wouldn't be the first time, Tom replied. The miners moved forward, not running, not charging, just walking, determined. The guards stepped aside. They were hired help, not believers. When the math turned bad, they followed their instincts, and their instincts said survive. Rhett followed the crowd into the building. Voss watched them go. His face was unreadable now. The anger had been replaced by something else. Acceptance, maybe, or calculation. Men like him always had another move. The question was what it would be. Inside, the miners spread out, opening drawers, checking cabinets, looking for the truth they knew had to be there. The building creaked under the weight of 20 people searching simultaneously, paper scattered, furniture moved, the organized facade of a business operation dissolving into chaos. Rhett went straight for Voss's office. The desk was still there, the safe in the corner, the maps on the wall. He studied the room, thinking, if he had documents to hide, where would he put them? Not the safe. Too obvious. Safes could be cracked, not the filing cabinets. Too accessible. He looked at the floorboards, at the walls, at the ceiling. Standard construction. Nothing unusual. Except there. Behind the map of the mine workings, the wall looked slightly different, newer paint, less faded, like someone had patched something. Rhett pulled down the map. Behind it was a section of wall maybe 2 feet square. He pressed on it. Hollow sound. He pulled his knife and worked the blade into the seam, pried. The panel popped free. Behind it was a metal box. Rhett pulled it out. Heavy. Locked. He carried it to the desk and used the knife to force the lock. It took 3 tries, but finally the mechanism gave. Inside were papers. Real papers. Original ledgers in Silas's handwriting. Production reports with actual stamps and dates. Assay results that showed veins still rich with silver. Page after page of evidence showing exactly what they'd suspected. Voss had been lying. The mine was productive. The money was there. He'd just been stealing it. Tom! Rhett called out. Tom came running, looked at the papers. His face went through the same journey Rhett's had. Shock, anger, vindication. This is it, Tom breathed. This is everything. Other miners crowded in, passing papers around, reading, understanding. The quiet rage that filled the room was almost tangible. Outside, someone shouted. Then a gunshot. Everyone froze. More shots. Rapid fire, coming from the street. Rhett ran to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. Voss had called in reinforcements, not just a few men, an army. Maybe 20 riders, armed, professional. They'd formed a perimeter around the building, trapping everyone inside, and Voss stood in the middle of them, his wounded arm forgotten, his face lit with triumph. Gentlemen, he called out, loud enough to carry through the broken window. I gave you a chance to walk away. You chose poorly. Now we do this my way. Rhett's mind raced through the options. 20 armed riders outside, 22 miners inside with picks and shovels. 7 of Voss's original guards still in the building somewhere. The math was impossible. Even with the shotgun and his pistol, even with surprise and desperation, this was a slaughter waiting to happen. Tom moved beside him at the window. His face had gone gray. We're trapped. Yeah. What do we do? Rhett looked at the metal box on the desk, at the evidence they'd found. We make sure this matters. Whatever happens next, these papers get to the Federals. That's the mission now. How? We're surrounded. Not completely. There's always a way out. Just have to find it. Rhett turned from the window. Back door, where is it? One of the miners spoke up. Loading entrance. Other side of the building, but they'll have it covered. Probably. What about the roof? Roof access from the second floor, ladder goes up to the storage attic. Rhett grabbed the metal box, shoved it at Doc Sullivan. You're getting out of here, taking this with you, getting it to safety. She stared at him. How exactly am I supposed to do that? I'll create a distraction. You go through the back, move fast, don't stop, get to your office, lock yourself in with Silas. When the Federals arrive in the morning, you give them everything. And you? I'll figure something out. That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's the best option we have. Rhett looked at Tom. Get your men ready. Windows, doors. Anywhere they might try to force entry. Don't shoot unless you have to. Make noise. Make them think we're more prepared than we are. Tom nodded. Started organizing. Men moved to positions. Some grabbed furniture to barricade the doors. Others found tools that could double as weapons. The fear in the room was thick, but so was determination. They'd crossed too many lines to go back. Outside, Voss's voice rang out again. You have 5 minutes to send out Calder and the papers. Do that. The rest of you walk free. My quarrel isn't with working men doing what they're told. It's with thieves and agitators. He's lying, someone muttered. Of course he's lying, Rhett said, but he's also buying time. Probably waiting for something. More men. Better position. We need to move before he's ready. He went to the back of the building, found the loading door Tom had mentioned. It faced an alley. Through the window beside it, Rhett could see 2 riders stationed at the far end. Watching. Waiting. Not a full blockade, but enough to be a problem. Rhett checked his ammunition. 3 shells in the shotgun, 1 round in his pistol, 4 shots total, not enough to fight through 20 men, but enough to create chaos. He went back to the front office, found lamp oil, 2 full cans. He poured 1 across the floor of the main room. The smell was sharp, immediate. Miners backed away from it. What are you doing? Tom asked. Creating options. Voss wants to force us out. We force him to react instead. Rhett looked at Doc Sullivan. When I light this, you run. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. Just run. This is insane. Yeah, but insane's all we have left. He moved to the window. Voss was still out there, surrounded by his hired army, looking confident, looking like a man who'd already won. Rhett raised his voice. Voss, you want to talk? Let's talk. Voss turned. Even from this distance, Rhett could see the smile. Running out of time, Calder. 4 minutes now. I've got a counteroffer. You let these miners walk. They're not part of this. They were just looking for their wages. That's between you and me. Everything's between you and me, but you made it bigger when you brought them into it. Now they're accomplices, witnesses, liabilities. So you're planning to kill all of them? 20 men? That's not a cover-up. That's a massacre. Even your connections can't make that disappear. Voss's smile didn't fade. Who said anything about killing? I'm offering mercy. They walk out, hand over Calder and the stolen property. Nobody else has to die tonight. Stolen property? Rhett held up the metal box so Voss could see it. You mean the evidence of your fraud? The real ledgers? The documents that prove you've been stealing from these men for 3 years? The smile cracked. Just a little. Those are private business records, taken illegally from my office. These are proof. Proof that's going to the federal prosecutors whether you like it or not. Whether I live or die, whether any of us make it through tonight, the truth's already out, Voss. You just haven't accepted it yet. 3 minutes. Rhett turned to the miners, kept his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, inside and outside. You wanted to know why I came to Red Rock, why I walked into that saloon knowing it was a trap, why I didn't just mail the evidence and run. It's because information without testimony is just paper, numbers without faces. The Federals would investigate, sure, maybe even file charges. But Voss has money, has lawyers, has time. He'd drag it out for years. Most of you would be dead or gone before it resolved. And he'd probably walk. He paused. Let that sink in. But if we stand here tonight, if we look him in the eye and refuse to back down, if we make him choose between walking away and committing a crime so big, even his money can't buy silence, that changes everything. That's not just evidence, that's testimony, that's witnesses. That's the kind of story that newspapers print and juries remember. Tom's voice was quiet. You're asking us to die for a story. I'm asking you to live for the truth. There's a difference. Outside, one of Voss's riders called out, Time's up, boss. What do you want us to do? Voss was quiet, calculating. He'd expected fear, expected surrender, The fact that 20 miners were still standing inside, still defiant, had changed his math. "Burn them out," Voss said finally. "Torch the building. Anyone who runs, take them alive if possible, dead if necessary." The riders moved, some dismounted, started gathering material, dry wood from the surrounding buildings, cloth, anything that would burn. Rhett struck a match. "What are you doing?" Tom grabbed his arm. "Beating them to it." Rhett dropped the match onto the lamp oil he'd poured. Fire raced across the floor. Not a big fire yet, not dangerous, but growing, and more importantly, making smoke. Thick black smoke that would be visible for miles. "You just trapped us in a burning building." "No. I made it so Voss can't control the narrative. His men torched this place. It's arson, murder. But if it's already burning when they arrive, if it looks like an accident, if the story's confused, that's reasonable doubt. That's his lawyers saying maybe the miners started it. Maybe Calder did. Maybe it was an accident. Confusion is our friend right now." The smoke was billowing now, pouring out the broken windows, rising into the night sky like a signal flare. Doc Sullivan coughed. "We need to leave, now." "Back door, go." Rhett handed her the metal box. "Stay low, move fast." "And Doc?" He caught her eyes. "Thank you for choosing the hard right over the easy wrong." She nodded. Didn't waste time with goodbyes. Just ran. Rhett watched her disappear down the hallway. Then he turned to the miners. "Anyone who wants out, go with her. No shame in it. You've already done more than most would." Nobody moved. Tom grinned. It looked wrong on his weathered face, too wild, too desperate. "We came here to get paid. Figured we might as well earn it." The fire was spreading. Not fast, but steady. The smoke was worse, thick enough to make breathing hard. Rhett moved to the front window. Through the haze, he could see Voss's men approaching the building, torches in hand. Then they saw the smoke, the flames. They stopped. Confusion. Exactly what Rhett wanted. Voss was shouting orders, hard to hear through the smoke and the crackling of the growing fire. But his body language said it all. Anger, frustration, loss of control. Rhett aimed the shotgun through the window. Didn't fire, just let them see it. Let them know that anyone who got too close would pay for it. The riders backed up, forming a wider perimeter, waiting. The building was burning. Everyone inside would have to come out eventually. They just had to wait. But waiting meant witnesses, meant time for other people to notice. The smoke plume was visible across the whole town now. People would be waking up, looking, asking questions, and Voss couldn't kill an entire town. "We need to get to the roof," Rhett said. "Fire's going to force us out soon anyway. Might as well do it on our terms." They moved as a group, up the stairs to the second floor. The smoke was lighter here, but the heat was building. Rhett could feel it through the floorboards. The fire was consuming the first floor faster than he'd expected. The old wood was dry, hungry for flame. The ladder to the attic was narrow, only one person at a time. Tom went first, then the other miners. One by one, climbing into darkness. Rhett went last. Below him, the building groaned, load-bearing timbers starting to fail. He climbed fast, hands slipping on the rungs, sweat or soot or blood, he couldn't tell anymore. The attic was barely 5 feet tall, cramped, hot, but there was a hatch leading to the roof. Tom was already pushing it open. Cool night air rushed in, sweet and clean after the smoke. They emerged onto the roof like miners coming up from a deep shaft, gasping, coughing, alive. The view from up here was surreal. Red rock spread out below them, dark buildings, empty streets, and in a ring around the mining office, 20 riders on horseback, torches burning, weapons ready, waiting for their prey to emerge. But they weren't looking up. Tom laughed. It came out broken. Half cough, half hysteria. "Now what? We fly?" "Next building's maybe 12 feet away," one of the younger miners said. "We could jump." "In the dark? Across a gap we can barely see? That's suicide." "Staying here's suicide too. Fire's going to reach us in maybe 5 minutes." Rhett looked at the gap. It was wide, too wide for comfort, but the miner was right. The alternative was burning or surrendering. Both meant death. "We make a bridge," Rhett said. "Out of what?" "Attic had support beams, loose timber. We pull some planks, lay them across the gap, one at a time. We cross." It wasn't a good plan. It was barely a plan. but it was something. They went back down into the attic. The heat was intense now. The fire had reached the second floor. They had minutes, maybe less. Working in near darkness, they pulled loose boards, found a beam that was 12 feet long, dragged it to the roof hatch. The smoke followed them up, black and choking. 3 men manhandled the beam onto the roof, positioned it across the gap. It reached, barely. Both ends resting on roof edges with maybe 6 inches of overlap on each side. "That'll never hold," someone said. "It has to," Rhett replied. The youngest miner went first, crawled across on his hands and knees. The beam sagged in the middle, but held. He made it to the other side, turned and waved. One by one, they crossed. Some on hands and knees, some standing and running across in 3 quick steps. Each one a gamble. Each one a prayer to luck or fate, or whatever kept people alive when they probably shouldn't be. Tom went second to last. He was heavier than the others. The beam groaned, cracked, but didn't break. He made it across, breathing hard. Rhett was last. Behind him, the mining office was fully engulfed, flames shooting through the roof. The hatch they'd come through was a square of pure fire now. Another minute, and he'd have been trapped. He stepped onto the beam. It shifted under his weight. The shotgun made him awkward, off balance. He took another step. The beam cracked louder. He could feel it starting to give. He ran. 3 steps. The beam broke on the third. His foot went through empty air. He lunged forward, grabbed the edge of the opposite roof. His fingers found purchase, held. Tom grabbed his arms and pulled. Rhett rolled onto the roof, lay there gasping. Behind him, the beam fell. It landed in the alley below with a crash that was lost in the roar of the fire. They were across, safe for the moment. The building they were on now was the old surveyor's office, dark, empty, but it offered a path down that didn't involve Voss's men. Below, chaos was erupting. The mining office was an inferno now, drawing attention from across the town. People were emerging from houses, watching. Some were heading toward the fire, others staying back. But all of them seeing, all of them witnesses. Voss was in the street, shouting at his men, trying to maintain control. But control was slipping. The story had gotten away from him. A burning building in the middle of town. 20 miners missing. Bodies or survivors? Nobody knew. And that uncertainty was poison for a man who needed certainty. Rhett and the miners climbed down through the surveyor's office, found a side door that opened onto a different street. They emerged into relative darkness, away from the fire, away from the riders. Tom looked at Rhett. "What now?" "Now we wait. Sun comes up in maybe 3 hours. Federals arrive shortly after. We stay hidden until then. Stay quiet. Stay alive." "And Voss?" "Voss is done. He just doesn't know it yet." They scattered, small groups, heading to different safe houses. Friendly homes. Places Voss's men wouldn't think to look. Rhett went with Tom and 2 others. They made it to a small house on the eastern edge of town. The door opened before they could knock. An old woman stood there, 80 if she was a day, face like crumpled paper, but her eyes were sharp. "Thomas? About time you did something." "Sorry, Mrs. Brennan." Martha Brennan, the woman from the street, the one who'd told Rhett he was making a mistake. She looked him up and down. "Didn't die. Surprising." "I'm resilient." "You're lucky. There's a difference." She stepped aside. "Get in, all of you, before someone sees." Inside was warm, clean, smelled like bread and old wood. She pointed to chairs. "Sit, I'll make coffee. You look like you need it." They sat. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving exhaustion, pain. Rhett's ribs ached. His hands were blistered from the hot ladder. His lungs felt raw. But he was alive. They all were. Martha brought coffee. Real coffee. Strong and bitter. Rhett drank it gratefully. "The fire," she said. "That was you?" "Yeah. Voss won't forgive that. Won't forgive any of this. Voss won't have a choice. By sunrise, everyone in Red Rock will know what happened tonight. Know he tried to burn 20 men alive. Know he's been stealing. Know the Federals are coming. His power's based on fear and secrecy. Both are gone." Martha sat down heavily. "You really think it's that simple? That truth wins and tyrants lose? No. I think truth gives people a choice. What they do with it is up to them. But at least they'll have the choice." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, my husband worked in those mines for 30 years, died of lung rot when he was 52. Voss sent flowers to the funeral, gave a speech about sacrifice and duty, never mentioned that safety equipment cost money he didn't want to spend, never mentioned that the ventilation system hadn't been updated in a decade. Just flowers and pretty words. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be successful. Make this mean something. Because if you fail, if Voss walks away from this, then my husband died for nothing. All of them died for nothing. The weight of that settled over the room. Rhett understood what she was saying. This wasn't just about justice or revenge or even the truth. It was about meaning, about whether suffering had purpose or was just random cruelty inflicted by powerful men on powerless victims. Outside, the night continued. The fire burned. Voss's men searched. And across Red Rock, people whispered in the darkness, telling stories, sharing rumors, building a narrative that Voss couldn't control. By the time the sun started to gray the eastern sky, the whole town knew about the confrontation, the fire, the miners who'd stood up, the evidence that had been found. Details were confused, contradictory, but the core story was consistent. Harlan Voss had been stealing, and someone had finally called him on it. Rhett stood at Martha's window, watching the dawn. The mining office was rubble now, still smoking, but the flames were gone. Voss's men had pulled back, regrouped at the northern edge of town, waiting. For what? Rhett couldn't say. Then he saw them, riders approaching from the south, 6 men on horseback, moving with purpose. They wore badges, federal marshals. They'd arrived early. Rhett felt something release in his chest, relief so profound it was almost painful. They'd made it. Against odds that should have been impossible, they'd survived long enough for help to arrive. "Tom," he said quietly, "go get the others. Bring them to Doc Sullivan's office. It's time." Tom left at a run. Rhett stayed at the window, watching the marshals ride into town, watching Voss's men see them, watching the calculation happen in real time. Fight federal marshals or run. It wasn't much of a choice. One by one, Voss's riders broke off, heading in different directions, disappearing into the morning, hired guns who'd decided the pay wasn't worth federal prison. By the time the marshals reached the center of town, only 3 men remained with Voss. Rhett left Martha's house, walked openly down the street. The marshals saw him. Hands went to weapons, but they didn't draw. The lead marshal was older, gray hair, scars on his face that said he'd earned his badge the hard way. He looked at Rhett, at the shotgun, at the dried blood and soot. "You called her?" "I am." "Federal Marshal Wade Garrett. Got a telegraph yesterday about fraud, murder, various crimes. Telegraph said you'd have evidence." "I do. So does Silas Boone, so does Doc Sullivan, and so do 20 miners who can testify about what happened here." Garrett nodded slowly. "And the burning building?" "Self-defense. Voss tried to burn us out. We beat him to it." "That's going to need some explaining." "I've got all day." Garrett looked past Rhett to where Voss stood, still surrounded by his last 3 loyal men, still trying to maintain dignity. "Mr. Voss," Garrett called out, "need to have a word with you." Voss walked forward. He'd cleaned up again, fresh clothes, fresh bandage, looked almost respectable if you ignored the exhaustion around his eyes. "Marshal, this is highly irregular. I wasn't informed of any federal investigation. Investigation started when we received credible evidence of fraud. That evidence came from Silas Boone, corroborated by Rhett Calder, and apparently confirmed by documents seized last night. Those documents were stolen from my office during an illegal raid. Documents can't be stolen if they're evidence of a crime. That's not theft. That's discovery." Voss's jaw tightened. "I want my lawyer." "That's your right. In the meantime, you're under arrest. Fraud, embezzlement, attempted murder. We'll add charges as we investigate. This is a mistake, a terrible mistake. I have connections, political allies. You can't just, I can, and I am." Garrett gestured to his men. They moved forward, produced handcuffs. Voss looked at Rhett. His face was pale, all the confidence gone, replaced by something ugly, bitter. "You destroyed everything," Voss said. "For what? Principle? Justice? You think anything will actually change?" Rhett was quiet for a moment. Then, maybe, maybe not. But at least people will know the truth. At least they'll have a choice. That's more than they had yesterday. The truth doesn't feed families, doesn't put food on tables. I gave these people jobs, purpose. Without me, this town dies. This town was already dying. You were just profiting from the corpse. Rhett stepped closer. You want to know the difference between you and me? You think power is about control, about making people need you. I think power is about giving people the tools to save themselves. You built a cage and called it security. I just opened the door. Voss spat. Poet, philosopher. Doesn't matter. You'll be forgotten in a week. I'll be remembered for decades. You're probably right, but you'll be remembered as a thief, as the man who tried to burn 20 miners alive to cover his crimes. That's your legacy. Enjoy it. The marshals led Voss away. He went quietly in the end. Men like him always did once the game was truly over. All the bluster and threats evaporated when actual consequences arrived. The miners emerged from their hiding places. Doc Sullivan appeared with Silas. The old man looked better, still weak but standing on his own. He saw Rhett and smiled. Told you it would work, Silas said. No, you didn't. You told me I was an idiot. Same thing. Marshal Garrett spent the next 3 hours taking statements, examining evidence, building his case. The metal box Rhett had found became the centerpiece. Original ledgers, real production reports, proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. By noon, the story was spreading beyond Red Rock. Telegraph lines humming, newspapers taking notes. The tale of a mining town that had stood up to corruption and won. Rhett sat on the steps of Doc Sullivan's office, exhausted, hurting, but satisfied in a way that was hard to articulate. He'd come to Red Rock to deliver evidence. Mission accomplished. Everything else had been improvisation. Tom sat down beside him. The marshal says we'll get our back pay. Federal receivers will audit everything. Might take months, but we'll get what we're owed. Good. More than good. It's everything. Tom paused. What you did? Coming here? Standing up? Most men would have just mailed the evidence and run. Most men are smarter than me. Maybe. But the world needs a few fools willing to stand in the fire. Tom stood up, offered his hand. Thank you. For whatever it's worth. Rhett shook it. It's worth plenty. The miners gathered their families, started making plans. The mine would reopen under new management, federal oversight until a proper owner could be found. The work would continue. Red Rock would survive. Maybe even thrive. Silas approached as the sun started its descent toward evening. The old man moved carefully, each step measured. But there was life in his eyes that hadn't been there before. You're leaving, Silas said. Not a question. Yeah, my horse is probably 3 towns over by now, but I'll find her. She's smart that way. Where will you go? Don't know. Somewhere that needs help. Somewhere truth matters more than power. That could be anywhere. Exactly. Silas handed him an envelope, heavy. The miners took a collection. Said you earned it. Rhett opened it. Cash. More than he'd seen in months. He tried to hand it back. This is their money, their back pay. They'll get theirs. This is separate. Call it a bonus for services rendered, for standing in places most people won't, for doing things most people can't. Rhett pocketed the envelope, not because he needed the money, but because refusing would dishonor the gesture. You going to be okay? Me? I'm 73 years old. I documented fraud for 6 months, nearly died in a fire, helped bring down a corrupt empire. If I die tomorrow, I'll die satisfied. Silas smiled. Besides, someone needs to make sure the Federals don't mess this up. Someone who knows where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. Metaphorically. Mostly. They stood together watching the town. Red Rock looked different in the evening light. Less desperate, like maybe it had remembered how to hope. You know what I learned? Silas said after a while. All those months documenting Voss's crimes, watching people suffer, feeling powerless. What? That information without courage is just noise. I had the evidence for months. Did nothing with it because I was scared. Too old. Too weak. Too smart to take on someone with Voss's power. He looked at Rhett. Then you showed up. Did every stupid, dangerous, impossible thing I'd convinced myself couldn't be done. And it worked. Not because you were stronger or smarter, but because you were willing. Willing to be an idiot, you mean? Willing to stand when everyone else was kneeling. That's not idiocy. That's courage. And courage is contagious. You showed 20 miners they could fight back. They showed the whole town. The whole town will show other towns. That's how change happens. Not through perfect plans or overwhelming force. Through one person deciding that enough is enough. Rhett didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Just stood with Silas and watched Red Rock breathe. As the sun touched the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and gold, Doc Sullivan appeared. She had a basket. Food, bandages, practical items for a man about to travel. "You'll need these," she said. "And you'll need to change those bandages every day. The burns on your hands will get infected if you don't." "Yes, ma'am." "I'm serious. Infection kills more men than bullets." "I believe you." She set down the basket, looked at him properly. "You could stay, help rebuild, make sure this actually sticks. You don't need me for that? You've got Tom, Silas, 20 miners who learned they're stronger than they thought. Red Rock will be fine. Will you?" It was a good question. Honest. Rhett thought about it. "Don't know," he said finally. "I've spent a lot of years moving from place to place, fighting other people's battles, leaving before I have to watch the aftermath. It's easier that way. Less complicated." "Easier isn't the same as better." "No, but it's familiar, and sometimes familiar is enough." Doc Sullivan nodded. She understood. "If you're ever back this way, there's a place for you, a home if you want one." "I'll remember that." She left him the basket and walked away. Back to her practice. Back to healing the people who remained. Rhett sat on those steps until full dark. Then he stood, shouldered the basket, started walking south, away from Red Rock, away from the battles he'd fought and the fires he'd started. But the thing about fire is it spreads. The story of what happened in Red Rock would travel, would reach other towns facing their own tyrants, would give them the same choice Rhett had given the miners. Kneel or stand, accept or fight, survive or live. Most would choose survival. That was human nature. But a few, maybe just a handful, would choose to live, would choose to stand. And those few would start their own fires, would burn down their own corrupt empires, would learn the same lesson Rhett had learned years ago. That power unchallenged becomes tyranny. That silence in the face of injustice is complicity. That sometimes the only way to change the world is to stand in the middle of it and refuse to move. It wasn't easy. It wasn't safe. It definitely wasn't smart. But it was necessary. And sometimes necessary was enough. Rhett Calder walked into the darkness. Behind him, Red Rock settled into its first peaceful night in 3 years. Ahead of him, somewhere in the vast territory, another town was suffering under another Voss. Another group of people was waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible. He'd find them. Eventually. He always did. Because some men were built for settling down, for putting down roots and building lives and watching children grow. And some men were built for the spaces between, for the hard choices and the dangerous stands and the moments when someone needed to step forward and say no more. Rhett knew which kind he was. Had known since the first time he'd stood up to power and survived. It wasn't a calling, wasn't destiny, just a recognition of where his skills fit in the world, where he could do the most good even if that good came wrapped in violence and fire. The stars were out now, infinite, indifferent. Rhett had never been much for philosophy or religion, didn't need cosmic meaning to justify his choices. The meaning was in the doing, in the miners who would get paid, in the families who would eat, in the children who would grow up in a town that remembered it could fight back. That was enough. That was everything. He walked through the night, following stars and instinct toward whatever came next. His ribs ached, his hands hurt, his lungs still burned from smoke. But he was alive. Red Rock was free. And somewhere out there, another town was waiting for someone to show them that impossible was just a word powerful men used to keep weak men quiet. Rhett Calder was done with quiet. The road stretched ahead, dark, uncertain, full of danger and possibility in equal measure. He smiled and kept walking,